I've never liked family parties, especially the kind where every glance feels like they're dissecting you as some kind of moral cautionary tale. But that night, I showed up, on time, wearing the oldest navy dress I owned, and told myself, just survive a few hours. It was my cousin Madison's engagement party, held at a high-end Italian restaurant in the heart of Phoenix, where warm golden lights hit every champagne glass just right, and soft jazz played like someone was trying to pour artificial grace into the air. I was seated at the far end of the long table, between my mother and Aunt Bonnie, the one who always carries cat photos in her wallet like family heirlooms. I honestly thought Madison would keep her word. No personal stuff, I promise. Just food and fun. It was naive of me to believe her. As soon as the first glass of champagne was empty, she stood up, grinning like a talk show host. "Hey, everyone," she called out, tapping her spoon against the glass with a clink. "I just want to say one quick thing. I'm honestly so grateful I found someone like Bryce. Kind, sweet, and, most importantly, never been scratched." The whole table chuckled. Madison turned to look at me, paused for just a beat, then laughed. "I just hope I don't make the same mistakes as certain people. I could never be brave enough to raise a kid alone at 32. One beat of silence. Then laughter broke like a wave. Uncle Rick, my mom's brother, slapped the table and howled, "Come on, Brooklyn. Men don't go back for used goods. No one wants a car after it's been wrecked." I heard my mom exhale through her nose. She gave a half smile, didn't say a word, and poured herself more wine. No protest, no defense. I sat there, trying to keep my spine straight, my eyes fixed on the glass of water in front of me, heat crawling up from my neck to my ears. I didn't look at anyone. I was afraid that if I did, I'd stand up and say something I couldn't take back. Madison kept performing like what she said was just a harmless little joke. "I mean, who knows, maybe I'll end up being the second fabulous single mom in the family," she laughed loudly, tossing her head back like she'd just nailed a punchline. They all laughed with her, not politely, gleefully, the kind of laugh people say for jokes they've been dying to tell. I clenched my napkin on my lap, my fingers trembling. "Bryce." Madison's fiancé sat beside her, not laughing. He stared at his plate like it might burst into flames. But he didn't say anything either. I felt like a misprinted poster hung by mistake at a glamorous event. They looked at me like I was the leftover evidence of a bad decision they didn't want their kids repeating. No one spoke up for me. No one told Madison to stop. I glanced to the far end of the room where my 8-year-old son Liam was seated at the kids' table. He was coloring a school bus with a green crayon, completely unaware that his mom was being publicly torn apart just a few feet away. I swallowed hard. They say single moms are weak, but I made it through 5 winters with the power shut off halfway through the month. I stayed up all night freelancing and still woke early to cook breakfast for Liam before 2nd grade. And yet here I was. One comment from Madison, one round of laughter from my relatives, and I suddenly felt small again, labeled a mistake, right in the middle of my own life. I closed my eyes for a few seconds, not to cry, but to keep myself from standing up and doing something I'd regret. I used to think silence was the worst thing, but no. The worst thing is the look in the eyes of people who once called you family, when they decide you're a warning label. When I found out I was pregnant, I was 23. I'd already planned to transfer into the master's program in social work down in San Diego. But then came one red line. Then 2. Then a call that went unanswered. And finally a short text. "I'm not ready." My mom called it a consequence. She didn't yell, didn't get angry, just set down her teacup, stared at me for a long time and said, "Brooklyn, at least maybe you'll learn something from this." I moved out 2 days later and into a tiny studio apartment in Glendale. That summer was scorching. The air conditioner in the unit roared like a tractor every time it ran. I slept on a thin mattress pushed against the wall. Liam was born one morning in September, 2 weeks early. No one came to the hospital. On the birth certificate I wrote undisclosed under father's name. The first 3 years blurred together with diaper changes, bottle washing, and back-to-back shifts. I worked mornings as a waitress at a coffee shop and delivered for a nap in the evenings. At first, I told myself it was just for a few months, but those few months turned into years. Rent was the thing that stared me down at the end of every month like a final warning. There were times my bank account dropped to exactly $12. I waited outside the library at 7 a.m. just to use free Wi-Fi to apply for jobs. I ate instant noodles for a week straight to afford cough syrup for my son. And my family? They never asked, they only judged. At the few family gatherings I dared show up to, Aunt Angela would ask, half joking, "Brooklyn, still doing those little side gigs? Why not ask Uncle Harry for a desk job? It's got AC and insurance." As if I hadn't tried. As if I didn't have solid reasons for refusing to work under a man who once called me the only stain on our family name. As for Madison, she once burst out laughing when I told her I was picking up editing work for international students at night. "So, you're reading other people's term papers for money. That's efficient." The last time I spoke to Madison face to face was about 6 months before the engagement party, at a baby shower for a mutual friend. She walked in, tight dress, bright red lipstick, voice carrying through the room. I was in the side room changing Liam's diaper when she passed by, raised an eyebrow and said, "Still clinging to diapers and wet wipes, huh? It's like you're collecting bad life choices." I laughed, the kind of laugh you use to keep the peace, but I left the party early anyway. A month before her engagement party, I got the invitation. Thick cardstock, gold trim, a faint scent of expensive perfume clinging to the envelope. My name embossed on the front. Brooklyn Sinclair cordially invited. Inside a handwritten note. "Hope you can make it. It'll be so fun. Madison." I stared at it on the kitchen counter for days, sitting there between the electric bills, milk receipts, and Liam's school notices. My mom called exactly 3 times. The first was to ask if I'd received the invitation. The second was to say, "The whole family will be there." The third was more direct. "You should go. You can't avoid them forever. Go, eat something, smile a little, keep the peace. It's just one evening." I understood the subtext. Don't cause a scene. Don't make anyone uncomfortable. Don't embarrass the family because of you. So I went. Not because I wanted to, but because I'd grown used to swallowing things that needed to be said. I wore an old dress, borrowed a pair of shoes from the neighbor downstairs, and let Liam choose my necklace. My son said, "Wear this one, Mom. It looks like my heart." He didn't know that he was the only thing that still made me feel like I had worth in my own eyes. I didn't go for the party. I went to remind myself that I wasn't afraid of their stares anymore. Even if I had to sit in a room full of people who once treated me like a living warning label, I would still walk in. The moment I stepped into the reception hall, I knew I wasn't genuinely welcome. The lighting was warm and dim, glasses clinked together, and the blend of Chanel perfume and red wine hung in the air like everyone there had dressed themselves in layers of manufactured elegance. I didn't have that kind of layer. What I had was clarity. Madison came over first. Her red satin dress hugged every curve like this party was her own personal runway. She tilted her head, lips curled in a way that said more than her words. "Oh, Brooklyn! I really didn't think you'd show up. Are you here alone, or did you bring Liam?" I smiled, keeping my tone even. "Liam's here. He's over in the play area." "Of course," she nodded, voice light as air. "I set up a cute little corner for the kids, dinosaur cookies and Crayola crayons." She didn't ask if Liam had any allergies, didn't ask if I needed anything. She just turned away and blended back into the crowd like she'd completed a difficult diplomatic duty. A server led me to my seat, at the very end of the table, between Mrs. Diane, the one who still sends weekly prayer chain emails to everyone, and Mr. Stan, who manages to insert a Vietnam War anecdote into every conversation regardless of context. My mother had arrived earlier and was seated a few chairs away. She glanced at me as I sat down, then looked away, as if weighing whether to start a conversation or pretend she was really focused on the piece of baguette in her dish. I set down my purse, pulled out my phone, and quickly texted Liam. "I'm at the last table on the right. Text me if you need anything." Liam replied with a photo of his coloring page. A purple-toothed shark against a sky full of light blue stars. I smiled, just for that. "What are you doing now, Brooklyn?" Mrs. Diane asked without looking up from her salad. "I'm still freelancing," I said. "Oh, like online articles and stuff?" She smiled like I'd just told her I sold cotton candy at the state fair. "Does that come with health insurance, honey?" I didn't answer. That question was never about concern. It was her way of saying, "You're not doing okay and we all know it." Mr. Stan chimed in. "I tell Mary all the time, being a single mom is rough. Without a man it's all wobbly. But hey, Brooklyn's lucky to have such a well-behaved little guy." He laughed heartily, like he'd just awarded me a survival medal. I picked up my glass of water, took a sip, and reminded myself not to react. Not here. Not now. Another cousin, Haley, brushed past behind me. She patted my shoulder and leaned down to whisper, "That dress is fine, a little vintage." And then she vanished like a passing breeze. I looked around the room. Polished smiles, cheek kisses with eyes that darted elsewhere. Everyone looked successful, polished, perfectly curated. But everything felt as thin as frosting on a too-dry cake. Pretty, but unable to hide the bitterness underneath. Liam was still seated just a few feet away at the kids' table, completely separated from me and the world of carefully controlled facades. I saw him breaking a cookie in half to share with the blonde girl. For him, this was just a night of toys and sweets. For me, it was a constant effort not to let each breath turn into a sigh. Madison stood in the center of the room, glowing with laughter beside Bryce, her fiancé, who looked like he had borrowed his smile from someone else. He held a wine glass but didn't drink. Every so often, his eyes drifted toward me. Once, our gazes met. Just for a moment, then he looked away. I didn't know what he was thinking, and I didn't care. What I cared about was the fact that I'd been seated at the far end, deliberately placed out of view, like an object that didn't match the lighting, and they thought that would make me stay quiet, stay small. But what they forgot is this. I'm no longer the girl who cried in the bathroom at 23 over a single text message. I've survived more than anyone in this room would dare admit to. And if they thought tonight would be the night I'd lower my head, then they've clearly never seen me walk through a storm. As soon as the main course was cleared, the lights in the room softened, the background music faded, and Madison stood up. I saw it coming a few seconds before. How she adjusted her dress, glanced toward the center of the room, and lifted her glass with a look of giddy anticipation she didn't even try to hide. "Attention, everyone!" she beamed, like she'd just won the lottery. "I just want to say a few words before dessert." People turned toward her, smiling faces, a few phones raised to capture what they assumed would be a sweet, memorable moment. I set my fork down gently. A chill crept from the back of my neck down my spine. Bryce sat next to her, his face tense. He wasn't smiling. Just stared down at his wine glass, slowly turning it in his hand. Madison raised her glass high, her voice ringing out with smug pride. "I still can't believe I'm marrying someone like Bryce. He's smart, calm, responsible, and most importantly, so patient." The room erupted with laughter. A few whistles came from the left side of the table. Mrs. Diane placed her hand over her heart, nodding like she was witnessing the love story of the century. Madison waited for the laughter to die down, then squinted playfully. "Honestly, I just hope our marriage doesn't end up like some examples around this room." She turned her head just slightly, but it sliced through me like a blade. "What I mean is," Madison went on, twirling her champagne glass, I don't think I'd be strong enough to raise a kid alone at 32. I admire that, truly, but I leave that kind of greatness to someone else." A few people let out bursts of laughter like they couldn't hold it back. Someone at the end of the table said, "At least the car hasn't been totaled like some of the older models." "Oh, come on," another voice chimed in. "I doubt the trade-in value is even half of what it started at." Laughter roared again, sweeping across the room like a wave, drowning any space left for decency. My skin felt like it was burning. Every cell in my body wanted to disappear. But I stayed seated. I didn't walk out. I didn't lower my head. I just placed my hands on my lap, clutching the napkin until it wrinkled into a crumpled mess. Madison kept going as if she'd just wrapped up a light-hearted joke. She shifted topics to how she'd made Bryce give up his gaming console, how she organized the wedding planning in Excel, speaking in a flat tone like she was reciting a well-rehearsed script. But the laughter didn't roll as loud this time. A few people exchanged uneasy glances. No one said anything, but no one stood up either. My mother looked down, awkwardly studying her wrist like she'd just realized her bracelet was missing. Bonnie sat silently, her dessert spoon frozen in midair. I glanced around, looking for Liam. My son was still at the kids' table, drawing a rocket ship with a green crayon. His face was lit up, innocent in a way that made my chest ache. He had no idea his mother was being shredded just a few steps away by people who once claimed to love her. He also didn't know that when I named him Liam, I chose a name that meant resolute protector, because I hoped that even a part of him would grow stronger than I ever had to be. I remembered the night 2 years ago when I had to hold Liam while we slept in the car after being evicted. I remembered sitting there, my hand shielding his little head, whispering to myself, "No one will ever laugh in his face. I'll take every one of their laughs if it means he never has to." I bit my lip, pressing it tightly to stop the words forming in my throat from coming out. Because I knew this night wouldn't end with Madison's cheap joke. It wouldn't end with the sneers of relatives who stood behind their laughter too cowardly to face truth. I didn't know exactly what would happen next, but one thing I knew for sure, this night wasn't going to end the way they wanted it to. Because I hadn't survived all those years, all those battles, just to be taken down by one glass of cheap champagne and a cruel comment. When the laughter faded, I thought everything would carry on as usual. They'd talk, I'd stay silent, and the evening would roll past like nothing had happened. I was used to being the name mentioned as a cautionary tale, a what not to do story wrapped in a few smug jokes. But this time, something was different. I stood up. Not a sound, no one called on him, no one expected it. The chair scraped back with a small click, just loud enough to freeze the entire room. Madison turned, her brow tightening. "What are you doing?" she asked, still trying to sound gentle, though her eyes were beginning to flicker with alarm. Bryce didn't answer. He walked slowly, one step at a time, along the length of the table. I watched him, my heart tightening instinctively. A dozen scenarios flashed through my mind. Another verbal blow, a final declaration, the official conclusion to my public humiliation. But the look in Bryce's eyes wasn't what I expected. When he stopped right beside me, the room felt like it had been drained of air. No one spoke. No more clinking glasses, no more spoons tapping bowls, only the faint hum of jazz in the distance. Bryce turned to face everyone. His voice was low and steady. He didn't need to raise it. It was clear enough to quiet the room. "I think there's something everyone here should know." A chair shifted on the left side of the room. My mom looked up, her brow furrowed.